This happened just a few weeks ago. I'm Aaron. I'm a 35-year-old dog walker and part-time freelance writer. I thought moving to this small town would help me find some peace. It's cozy, tucked between rolling hills. My cottage sits on the edge of a dark forest. At first I felt hopeful. I never imagined I'd face something strange. On my first November evening, I took a client's dog for a walk. The sun set quickly, casting long shadows. I felt excited about the fresh air and the quiet. But as I walked into the woods, I heard a soft tapping. I thought it was just wildlife. Maybe a squirrel or something. I didn't pay much attention, but I felt a prickle at the back of my neck. It felt like someone, or something, was watching me. Over the next few days, the tapping grew louder. Sometimes it was rhythmic, almost like a whisper in the wind. Other times, it sounded like it came directly from the trees. I noticed strange footprints in the mud along the path. They were smaller than mine, almost childlike. It seemed odd for anyone to leave them. I tried to shrug it off. Maybe I was imagining things. Then, I met an old woman in town. She had crinkly skin and sharp eyes. I asked her about the area to be friendly. She warned me about children who had gone missing years ago near these woods. I felt a chill in my gut. My heart skipped a beat. I asked her more questions, but she stared at me, deciding if I was worth her time. That night I went back into the woods. I couldn't shake that feeling something was off. I wanted to confront whatever it was. As I stood there, the tapping started again. It was louder. I felt cold and decided to leave. I turned to go, but then a soft whisper floated past me. I couldn't make out the words, but it felt close. My hair stood on end. My heart raced as I quickened my pace. I think I might have been running. I didn't stop until I reached my cottage. I locked the door behind me. I stood there for a moment trying to steady my breath, but something felt very wrong. I kept thinking about what I heard and saw. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had disturbed something. What if those whispers tried to tell me something? I wasn't sure what it was, but I knew I wouldn't go back into those woods again. Then just last night I asked myself, what if they don't want to be forgotten? What if they're still out there waiting for someone? It made my skin crawl. I was scared to sleep. I thought I heard tapping outside my window. I lay still, trying to convince myself it was just the wind. But deep down I knew it was something far worse. The next day I woke up feeling groggy and uneasy. I slept poorly, the tapping echoing in my dreams. I tried to shake it off and went for my usual morning coffee at the local cafe. It was quiet, just a few regulars scattered around. I thought talking to someone might help clear my mind. I sat down at the counter, hoping for some normal conversation. The barista, a friendly woman named Sarah, noticed I was out of sorts. I mentioned my experience in the woods. Her smile faded and she leaned in closer. You weren't just hearing things, she said, lowering her voice. That tapping? It's something people talk about here. I felt my stomach drop. What do you mean? There are stories, whispers that lead to things. People have said they've seen shadows moving between the trees, particularly near where those kids went missing. She glanced around, as if worried someone might overhear. I nodded slowly, feeling a cold wave of dread wash over me. The weight of her words sunk deep into my chest. I had brushed off the old woman's warning, but now it felt different. It felt real. Some say those whispers are the children, Sarah continued. They can't rest. They want someone to find them. I forced myself to laugh, but it came out as more of a nervous chuckle. It's just a story, right? Sarah met my eyes, and for a moment, I saw fear there. You should be careful in the woods, people disappear. After that conversation, I couldn't focus on anything. I wandered around town, half listening to random chatter, but mostly replaying Sarah's words in my head. I should have gone home. I should have waited for things to settle. But something pulled at me, an urge to confront whatever it was in those woods. That evening, curiosity weighed heavier than my fear. If those whispers truly belonged to lost children, then what if they needed help? Maybe I could find solace for both them and me. With a flashlight in one hand and a heavy heart, I set out towards the woods again. The first steps felt daunting, the shadows stretching out around me. When I reached the spot where I had first heard the tapping, I stopped and listened. Silence. The calm before the storm. Then a soft rhythm began again, tapping against the trees. Softer at first, but growing louder. My pulse quickened. I turned to leave, but caught sight of something. Movement near the trunks. My mind raced as I shone the flashlight in every direction. And then I saw it. There, standing between the trees, a small figure dressed in pale gray. The light hit its face for a brief second before it vanished, a fleeting glimpse of something that sent a chill through my bones. My heart hammered in my chest. I was drawn to it, despite every instinct telling me to run. Then, the tapping transformed into a series of whispers, faint yet urgent. They seemed to be calling me, pleading. I hesitated. I was about to step forward when everything around me suddenly fell silent. And that's when I felt it. The ground beneath my feet trembled, and the air grew thick and heavy. I couldn't turn away now. I needed to know what was happening, but as the whispers faded, I realized I wasn't alone. Someone or something was behind me. I spun around, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. My heart raced, the underbrush rustled, and there was a movement just beyond the dim light. I wanted to run, but my feet felt anchored to the ground. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shaking. Silence answered, thick and suffocating. Just when I thought I was alone, I caught a glimpse of movement again, a shadow darting between the trees. I steadied my breath and tried to focus on the light. "Come closer," I shouted, sounding braver than I felt. The stillness clung around me like a wet blanket, and for a moment, I thought I might be imagining it all. But then a sound reached my ears, a soft whisper that echoed the same rhythm as the tapping I'd heard before. Just as I was about to take a step towards the noise, it stopped. I froze, my instincts screaming at me to leave. But the feeling that I was being drawn deeper into the woods was too strong to resist. I took a step back, intending to retrace my path, but before I could react, a small pale hand poked out from behind a tree, reaching toward me. My breath hitched in my throat. It looked almost human, but felt wrong. "Help me," the voice came, barely more than a breath. It was a child's voice, trembling and soft. The air around me grew colder, a chill creeping up my spine. Wide eyes peeked from behind the trunk, full of an unearthly sorrow. "They're coming." "Who's coming?" I stuttered, feeling more lost than ever. I wanted to retreat but found myself drawing closer, mesmerized by that haunting plea. "They take you," it whispered again. "You can't stay here." Suddenly the whispers erupted again, echoing a cacophony of cries, pleas for help, warnings of unseen dangers ahead. The tapping resumed, louder than before, as if beckoning me further into the gloom. I could see it now, the figure moving cautiously from behind the tree. It looked like a child dressed in faded gray with dirt smudged across its cheeks. My heart ached, and I felt an inexplicable urge to reach out. But just as quickly as it had appeared, the child glanced over its shoulder. Fear flashed in its eyes. "You have to run." Then, it was gone, swallowed by the shadows. I stood alone, the air charged with a sense of foreboding. The whispers receded, replaced by an unsettling stillness. I turned back toward the path, but doubt clawed at me. What was happening? My heart raced as various thoughts spiraled through my mind. That's when I heard it. A low growl echoing from the depths of the woods, unlike anything I'd heard before. Panic seized me. Whatever those shadows were, they weren't friendly. I took off running, branches slapping against me as I fled. The ground felt uneven and the whispers turned into a chaotic symphony behind me. They echoed, chasing me deeper into the woods. And then, I stumbled into an open area, the clearing I had tried to avoid. But it was different now. The moonlight flickered like a dying flame above. My eyes fell on the remnants of a makeshift memorial, strewn with items forgotten, old toys, photographs, and a single porcelain doll staring right at me with empty, soulless eyes. I froze, and a shiver ran down my spine. I had unwittingly stepped into something much darker, and I could feel the chill of dread settle over me once more. That's when I saw the shadows moving again, creeping closer from the edge of the clearing. Hungry for something more than just whispers, the shadows shifted, curling and twisting into grotesque shapes that defied logic. They loomed larger, advancing at an unhurried pace. I was frozen, my mind racing with the realization that whatever they were, they had no intention of letting me leave. The clearing felt suffocating. I could barely breathe as fear wrapped around my throat like a vice. I turned my flashlight toward the approaching figures, its beam flickering weakly, as if it sensed the danger. Each stutter of light revealed glimpses of thin limbs and hollow faces, all watching me with eyes that held an unsettling blend of curiosity and malice. "What do you want?" I rasped, feeling small. My voice barely pierced the heavy silence. One shadow stepped forward, its shape shifting, rendering it less human and more an apparition. A chilling wind swept through the clearing, carrying with it whispers that seemed to spiral out from beneath their forms. It was a language that made my skin crawl, an ancient chant steeped in despair. "Leave, or join us," it seemed to say. The notion struck me like a blow. They weren't just shadows. They were remnants of something lost, a memory or a warning. I stumbled back, instinctively ready to run, when I noticed something lying on the ground near the memorial. It was a small, tarnished locket, half buried in the dirt. The whispers intensified, twisting around me like a trapped animal. My eyes locked onto it. Curiosity battled with caution. I could feel a magnetic pull, as if the locket was calling me closer. I crouched down, my heart hammering in my chest. Reaching for the locket, I brushed away the dirt with shaking fingers. It popped open easily. Inside, a faded photograph showed a little girl smiling, her face hauntingly familiar. The girl from the woods, the one who had warned me. "Help me!" The stronger whispers echoed back in my ears, almost drowning out the low growl from earlier. My breaths became shallow. I wanted to scream but swallowed the sound down. I glanced back at the shadows, now closer, their movements synchronized and deliberate. Panic flared in me again. I slammed the locket shut, suddenly feeling like I was holding the key to a locked door, one that I wasn't sure I wanted to open. "Leave," I shouted, more to convince myself than them. But there was no response. The shadows lingered, pulsating with an eerie rhythm. Then I felt a presence behind me. My skin prickled as I turned. A figure stood there, cloaked in darkness, not part of the shadows creeping toward me. It was a woman, her features obscured, but her eyes reflected the same sorrow I had seen in the child's. "Don't," she warned softly, her voice a mere sigh against the wind. "You mustn't let them in." Before I could ask what she meant, the ground quivered beneath me. I staggered back, trying to steady myself. Fear surged as I realized she was part of it all. Then I turned and ran. The shadows lunged, a tide of darkness that threatened to swallow me whole. My feet pounded against the earth as I sprinted back, the whispers clawing at my sanity. Something was happening in the woods, something I couldn't comprehend, and the answers felt dangerously close yet impossibly far away. I burst out of the clearing, desperate to escape. But where would I go? A blinding light erupted behind me. I skidded to a halt, fear gripping my chest as I waited for the shadows to close in. The light flickered again. I had to keep moving. Just as I turned to find my escape, a new sound joined the whispers, an agonizing cry, piercing and raw. It shot through me, stopping my heart, and then everything went dark. I jolted awake, my heart racing. The darkness felt alive around me, thick and suffocating. I lay there for a moment, trying to gather my thoughts, but nothing made sense. Had I fallen? Was I lost? The last thing I remembered was the shadows, their whispers, their presence. I pushed myself up. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust to the darkness, but I sat up and scanned the area. I was in the woods, yet somehow farther from the clearing. The ground was cold and damp. I could barely see, but the shadowy trees loomed like silent sentinels, their branches swaying gently in the wind. "Hello?" I croaked, my voice hoarse. The only reply was the rustling of leaves. I felt a fresh surge of panic. The shadows could still be lurking nearby, and I didn't have my flashlight. The thought left me uneasy. The last thing I needed was to be caught off guard again. I stood slowly, brushing dirt off my clothes. Just as I took a step, I heard a soft rustle to my left. My heart thudded. "Is anyone there?" I called out, straining to hear over the pounding in my chest. Silence. Maybe I was alone now. I started moving carefully through the underbrush, staying low and trying to blend in with the shadows. I needed to find my way back to the path, back to safety. Each snap of a twig made me jump. I kept expecting the whispers to rise again, but they were gone, replaced by an eerie stillness. That's when I saw it. A faint glow coming from a break in the trees. Could it be the light from the clearing? My instincts screamed for me to avoid it, but curiosity won out. I crept closer, drawn in by the light. It turned out to be a small, old lantern hanging from a gnarled branch. It flickered softly, illuminating a circle of ground around it. I reached out to grab it, hoping it could ward off the darkness, but paused when I noticed something odd beneath it. There, carved into the ground, was a series of symbols I didn't recognize, ancient-looking and arranged in a spiral. I knelt, squinting at them. The whispers from before echoed in my mind, and a sense of familiarity washed over me, like I had seen them before. "Help me." I flinched at the sound of the voice, sharp and clear, but it came from nowhere and everywhere at once. I jerked around, searching the shadows but finding nothing. My breath hitched in my throat. I wasn't alone. "Who's there?" I shouted with more ferocity than I felt. The whispers returned, more frantic, wrapping around me like cold tendrils. I felt trapped, caught in a web of fear and confusion. "Please," I pleaded, the panic bubbling up. "Just tell me what you want." The light flickered erratically, and suddenly I understood. The lantern was not just a source of light. It was a beacon for whatever was watching me. They wanted to draw me back in, deeper into the woods, deeper into their grasp. As if on cue, the cries returned, rising and falling like a twisted melody. My resolve snapped. I grabbed the lantern, clutching it tightly, and bolted away from the symbols. I had to put distance between me and whatever was lurking in the shadows. But as I ran, the ground rumbled beneath my feet, and I could feel them closing in again. I sprinted toward the far side of the clearing, but the laughter began, wild and chaotic, piercing through the darkness. And then I saw it. A figure standing in front of me, draped in shadows. "You can't escape," it seemed to say, its voice smooth and cold. Panic flooded my senses, and I skidded to a stop. Just beyond it was a path, my only hope. Taking a deep breath, I bolted toward the figure, ready to push through. I had to get away before it was too late. I charged toward the figure, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it might drown out the laughter echoing around me. Darkness swirled like a living entity, blurring my vision as I closed the distance. I could make out nothing of its face, only a swirling haze of shadows rolling off it like smoke. "Get out of my way," I shouted, adrenaline pushing me onward. I had to press through to escape the terror that was closing in behind me. Just as I reached the figure, it stepped aside, almost lazily, as if to say it wasn't worried about my escape. I stumbled on, not glancing back. The path was beneath my feet, and for a moment I felt hope. But that was short-lived. The laughter turned into screams, high-pitched mocking screams that filled the air and made me shudder. Glancing back, I saw shadows writhing in the clearing, more figures swirling together, forming a chaotic mass behind the one I had passed. I ran faster, fear lending me strength. The path was narrow, lined with thick overgrowth. Each step crunched on twigs and leaves, echoing in the stillness. I had to keep going. Then I spotted it. A flicker of light ahead. A house? A cabin? My instinct screamed danger, but I didn't care. I sprinted toward it, desperation fueling my movements. The trees seemed to grasp at me with skeletal fingers as I pushed through, disregarding the pain of brambles tearing at my skin. I reached the edge of the clearing, and there it was. A rustic cabin. Darkened windows stared back at me. My heartbeat raced. Should I knock or keep running? But before I could decide, the door creaked open, revealing a man silhouetted by the light inside. "Come in," he beckoned, his voice calm and steady. I hesitated, glancing behind me. The shadows were pouring out of the woods now, swarming the clearing like a tide. "Please," I shouted, my voice breaking. "They're coming." The man motioned urgently for me to enter, and I stumbled inside, barely making it through the door before it slammed shut behind me. The room smelled of wood smoke and something else, something stale and old. I turned to face him, panting heavily, the lantern hanging at my side, unlit now. "Who are they?" I gasped. "What do they want?" He stood there, studying me with piercing eyes. "You shouldn't have taken the lantern. It draws them in. This place is a barrier, but it won't hold for long." His tone was grave, and I felt dread pooling in my stomach. "Then we need to leave," I insisted, panic rising again. He shook his head slowly. "You can't escape what you've already disturbed." Suddenly the window rattled as a furious wind whipped through the trees outside. The shadows pressed against the cabin, and I could hear their whispers trying to seep through the walls. My pulse quickened as the lantern flickered in my hand, the link between worlds tightening. I had awakened something that I couldn't control. I had to know what came next. And before I could ask, the man spoke again, his voice low. "You have a choice to make." A choice? What choice could I possibly have at this point? Hope flickered with the lantern's light. But what would I have to sacrifice to make it out alive? I stared at the man, confusion swirling in my mind like the shadows outside. "What do you mean? What choice?" My voice trembled slightly, and I hated the weakness I felt. He took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. "You can trade the lantern for your life. It's the key that binds them. If you give it up, they might let you go." "Trade it?" I asked, glancing at the flickering light. "But what would that mean? What's the price?" He sighed heavily, as if weighing my fate. "The lantern has its own desires, and it won't go quietly. Something of equal or greater value must be sacrificed." Panic rose in my chest. I don't have anything. I felt desperate now, the weight of his words heavy on my shoulders. What could I give? Outside, the wind howled as if answering my question. The shadows pressed harder against the cabin walls, their whispers growing louder. I thought I heard my name among them, twisted and distorted. I shivered. The man took another step forward, his voice serious. "You have to decide quickly, while we still have time." I glanced around the dim room. Every corner seemed to breathe with an energy I couldn't comprehend. What if I don't want to make a trade? Can't I just keep the lantern? A strange smile flickered across his face. "Then you'll face the consequences. They will find a way in when they realize you're here. The lantern won't protect you forever." I felt trapped. The shadows, the whispers, they were relentless. They wanted something from me, and I knew it. "What if I give you the lantern?" I blurted, my voice shaky but firm. His expression darkened. "This isn't about me. They want your essence, your very being, and they will take it one way or another. The lantern is a mere tool. You're the true prize." "Then what do I do?" I was pleading now, but the urge to survive overshadowed my fear. He stepped back, his eyes darting toward the door, terror creeping into his posture. "The choice is ultimately yours. But you must act now." The lantern flickered again, and an intense chill swept through the cabin. The shadows outside momentarily fell silent, as if they were holding their breath. I could feel the clock ticking. There was pressure building in the air, and I sensed that something was coming. "I need to know. Who are you?" I asked suddenly. "I'm a guardian of sorts, but my powers are waning," he replied, his voice low as if he feared being heard. "I can only aid you if you allow me to." I struggled with my thoughts, torn between instinct and desperation. I felt a pull toward the lantern, yet the darkness around us promised nothing but chaos. I wasn't ready to give up. That's when I noticed it, a dark shape forming just outside the window, gliding in the shadows. My breath caught as it pressed its twisted face against the glass, eyes shining hollow and hungry. "Make your choice," the man shouted, panic clear in his tone. I need time," I stammered, unsure of what to do. But time was slipping away, and the shadows were closing in. Then everything went dark. I gasped, the sudden darkness swallowing me whole. My heart raced, pounding in my chest like a wild drum. I felt weightless, as though time had been suspended. Then, just as abruptly, the dark receded, leaving me in a clearing lit by the soft glow of the lantern. But I wasn't alone. Around me, the same shadows that had pressed against the cabin now danced in a circle, their twisted forms writhing and stretching as if to a rhythm that only they could hear. Chilled to the bone, I looked around, trying to comprehend what was happening. "Welcome," a voice whispered, smooth yet laced with malice. I felt it wash over me like a cold wave. My skin prickled, and I instinctively took a step back. "Who's there?" I managed to choke out, trying to sound braver than I felt. Silhouettes merged and separated, creating an unsettling tapestry of movement. "Your choice brought you here," the voice continued. "You must choose now, or our hunger will consume you." The air felt suffocating. I turned to find the man, but he was gone, leaving me alone against the looming shadows. I clutched the lantern tightly, its warmth contrasting the chill surrounding me. I could almost hear it pulse with energy, coaxing me to make a decision. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. The shadows hissed, and the temperature dropped even further, wrapping around me like a shroud. "Your essence," they hissed in unison. "It is what we crave. You may trade the lantern for your freedom, or you could choose to become one of us." I felt my breath catch again. A flicker of doubt shot through me. I thought of my life, of the choices that had led me to that moment. Trading the lantern felt like surrender, but giving myself up to the shadows? That was unthinkable. "I'll never join you," I yelled, feeling the strength of my conviction. "You'll have to take me by force." The shadows paused, then swirled faster, their voices growing in intensity. Such defiance, it only makes the feast sweeter. Suddenly the lantern flared brighter, illuminating the clearing. The shadows shrank back, screeching against the light. I realized I had a chance. I could use the lantern. "Leave me alone," I screamed, thrusting the light forward. The shadows recoiled as the intensity pushed them toward the edges of my vision. I felt alive, a spark igniting within me. In that moment, the darkness seemed less menacing. I turned and ran, my only goal to find the path back to safety. Yet as I sprinted, I could feel the shadows trailing behind, their hunger intensifying with every step I took. Just then I stumbled and the lantern slipped from my grasp, rolling away into the depths of the forest. Panic surged through me as I watched it fade. I looked back to see the shadows closing in, their forms shifting as they prepared to envelop me. I scrambled to my feet, but dread gripped me. I had lost my light. Then, a chilling realization hit me. I had only traded one darkness for another. Was there any way out? That's when I saw it, a glimmer of soft blue light flickering in the distance, calling to me like a beacon. But was it hope or another trap? I had to find out. I took a deep breath and started toward the blue light, my legs moving almost on instinct. Each step felt like it dragged me deeper into the unknown. The shadows were still there, lurking, whispering promises of despair. They were relentless. As I approached the soft glow, I noticed it wasn't just a flicker. It pulsed gently, illuminating a small clearing ahead. I pushed through the underbrush, my heart pounding fiercely, not just from fear, but also from a strange sense of hope. When I broke through the trees, I came face to face with something I never expected. A small, waterlogged lantern hung from a gnarled branch above a shallow pool. The water mirrored the blue light. It seemed to ripple softly, casting a spell over the area. "Is this real?" I whispered, edging closer. The lantern looked old, with intricate carvings wound around its edges. For a moment I forgot about the shadows, entranced by the calm that surrounded the lantern. But then I felt it, a tremor in the ground beneath my feet. The shadows began to claw through the trees, shrieking and lunging. I had to act fast. I had come too far to be consumed now. I reached for the lantern, grasping its cool metal with both hands. As soon as I touched it, the glow pulsed brighter, stronger than before. It filled the clearing with a luminescent blue that fought back the darkness, momentarily freezing the shadows in place. "What do you want?" I shouted at the lantern, desperation lacing my voice. "Please help me." The shadows hissed, rage bubbling in their chorus. "You think you can escape? We have tasted your fear. You belong to us." Ignoring their taunts, I focused on the lantern. It felt alive in my grip, its light a beacon against the evil surrounding me. I took a step toward the pool, sensing that the water held something vital. Then, I saw it. A figure materialized at the water's edge, faintly illuminated by the lantern's glow. It was a woman, ethereal and serene. She looked at me with eyes that seemed to hold centuries of knowledge and pain. "Take the water," she urged softly, her voice cutting through the cacophony of the shadows. "It will show you the path. But be warned, once you look, the truth cannot be unseen." I hesitated, glancing back at the shadows that crept closer. There was power in the lantern, but would it be enough? Would looking into the water reveal a way out, or would it only deepen the darkness? "What path?" I shouted, frustration mixing with urgency. "I don't understand." "The choice was never truly yours," the woman replied, her expression sorrowful. "You are part of this story, just as they are. If you wish to escape, you must choose your truth." With the shadows nearly upon me, I had only moments left. I peered down at the shimmering water, my heart racing. Would I find clarity or chaos? The shadows lunged, and I felt the chill wrap around me like a vice. I had to make a decision. I braced myself and leaned closer over the pool, ready to embrace whatever truth awaited me in its depths. The moment I looked into the water, the world around me warped and twisted. The illumination from the lantern flickered, casting strange patterns on the surface. I leaned in closer, my breath catching as the image formed. Shadows swirling together, and then a face emerged. It was a girl, her wide eyes filled with terror. It was the same face I had seen in the woods, the one who had whispered for help. "Help me," she pleaded again, her voice softer now, like the rustle of leaves in the breeze. But beneath that plea lay a deeper layer, a history, a sorrow, a story I was beginning to grasp. Memories struck me like icy waves crashing against the shore. I saw flashes of her life. Laughter, shadows in the trees, a game of hide-and-seek that turned into a nightmare. I felt the weight of loss and fear settle like a heavy fog, suffocating the warmth of hope I'd clung to. I pulled back, gasping. My heart raced as the shadows moved faster now, their cries echoing like a chorus of despair. They wanted me. I was their new prize, their next connection to something they could not reach themselves. But I stood there, hands trembling around the waterlogged lantern, trying to fight back the instinct to flee. The girl's image remained in the water, mingled with the sights of her friends, lost in a game that spiraled into tragedy. I could see them running, faces gleeful as they dashed into the woods. But then shadows danced at the edges of my vision, reaching out with clawed fingers, pulling, grabbing, their vibrant souls until they became like wisps of smoke. I shook my head to clear it, desperate to escape this truth. "No," I shouted, but my voice was lost in the cacophony of wails and laughter. The darkness wrapped tighter, and I felt myself growing smaller, helpless amidst it all. The woman's ethereal voice returned, soothing yet haunting. "Do you see now? They are trapped in this cycle, waiting for someone to acknowledge their story, to set them free. You have the power." The weight of her words pressed down on me. The girl's face, now mixed with the faces of all those who had vanished, rooted deep in my mind. I couldn't walk away. I wasn't strong enough to abandon them all, even if it meant risking my own life. As the lantern flickered again, I understood. This was not merely a choice between living and dying. It was about the legacy I would leave behind. The girl in the water didn't need another life taken. She wanted her story told, the truth uncovered. I steadied my hands, determination igniting within. "I understand," I said, looking into the reflections, the cries of the shadows forgotten for a moment. "I'll help you. I'll tell your story." The water shimmered brightly in response, illuminating my decision. The shadows hissed furious and the temperature dropped as they rushed forward, a wave of darkness that threatened to drown me without hesitation. But instead of retreating, I thrust the lantern into the ground. A blinding burst of light erupted and the shadows recoiled, howling in agony. The spectral figures wailed, their forms visibly trembling as they struggled against the light's brilliance. In that moment, the truth of their existence transformed into a frail thread of hope. I lifted my voice, shouting over the chaos. "She's not lost. None of you are. You have to remember. Tell me your stories." The shadows paused, then paused once more. A flicker of understanding crossed their ethereal forms as I stepped deeper into the glow. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. I will tell the world what happened to you." One by one, the shadows hesitated and then began to shift. Their cries transformed, becoming harmonious whispers, stories that intertwining like threads weaving through a tapestry, resonating with shared anguish. Memories flooded into the air, haunting yet beautiful. The girl's laughter, the shadows of her friends and their rushing feet chasing sunlight, all woven together. Each tale filled the clearing, washing over me, a ceremony of remembrance. I could hear them clearly now, their voices echoing with energy, wrapping around my being like an embrace. They were no longer just lost souls. They were a community pleading for acknowledgement. I felt their presence intermingle with my own, and my resolve surged. As the strength of my conviction ignited the lantern's blaze, it spurred the shadows back, illuminating the clearing. The whispers melded into a singular voice, lifting me above the chaos, a bridge forged between the worlds. But just as quickly, time seemed to rush me again. I felt myself being drawn away like a tide pulling back before the next wave surged, the beauty of the shared memories washing me over in a final farewell. Everything blurred. The shadows released their hold, the tears of the lost mingling with the flickers of light. I stumbled back, heart racing, breathless from what I had seen, even as I seemed to retreat back into reality. When I awoke, I was in a familiar place, the edge of the woods, under the bright morning sun. The air was still, void of whispers or shadows. I rubbed my eyes, shaking the remnants of the dream from my head, but the weight of the experience lingered like an echo. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, tarnished locket. Inside was a photograph of the girl, her smile radiant, unhindered by the darkness that had once enveloped her. "I'll tell your story," I murmured, a promise to the memory of that night. I could still feel the weight of it in my heart, an unresolved farewell. There would always be questions unanswered, and the line between the supernatural and the ordinary remained blurred. I didn't know what I would do next, but I knew one thing. I would find a way to share what I had witnessed in the woods. And though the darkness was still a part of me, in telling their stories, perhaps I could ensure the lost would be heard, and their memories cherished. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I swear I hear tapping in the distance. But this time, it feels different. like a gentle reminder of the truths we carry and the stories waiting to be shared. I moved to a different town a few weeks later. Some nights I still think of the faces I encountered, their collective pain lingering in my heart. But mostly, I try not to think of the shadows in the woods.